Which biomarkers are most predictive of biological age? If you're familiar with the channel, then your guess may be RDW, as that's a significant predictor of Dr. Morgan Levine's biological age calculator, PhenoAge. But what about other biological age clocks? So to address that, we'll take a look at this paper, and if you're interested in checking out the paper yourself, the link will be in the video's description. So first, starting with clinical labs, and these are generated by one of the two major lab testing companies in the United States, LabCorp. And then on the y-axis, we've got years, biological age, either older or younger, and then that's when compared with per standard deviation increase for each biomarker, SDX. In terms of biological age, we put up a red line at 0, so biological age equals chronological age at 0, and then an older biological age would be above that line, and a younger biological age would be below that line. So we've got about a 5-year difference above and below the line. So if your guess was the RDW, here too, it is associated with an older biological age. But it's not associated with the oldest biological age. There are other biomarkers. If your second guess was metabolic health, glucose, and HbA1c, then you are in the ballpark for having the right answer. So relatively higher levels of glucose and HbA1c are associated with an older biological age in this study. But also note that adiponectin is on the list too. And adiponectin is produced by fat cells. I haven't done a deep dive into adiponectin's role in health and potentially longevity. So these data suggest that relatively higher adiponectin is associated with an older biological age. For those who have studied adiponectin more closely, if you want to give a head start for the channel to post a video about what's optimal for adiponectin, put it in the comments, and we'll see how the data looks. All right, on the other side of the equation, though, is albumin. And I've mentioned this before in other videos, but albumin is probably the most underrated biomarker when it comes to biological age and even potentially health in general. In this case, relatively higher albumin is significantly associated with a younger biological age. And note that those data are both in men in red and women in blue. And then next to it, we've got total protein. But note that total protein equals albumin plus globulin. So the data for total protein looks almost identical to the albumin data, which shouldn't be a surprise because albumin is a component of total protein. And then we've got two more biomarkers that are significantly associated with a younger biological age, the absolute level of lymphocytes and the lymphocyte percentage. So in other words, relatively higher levels of lymphocytes and the relatively higher levels of a lymphocyte percentage are associated with a younger biological age. And there are videos on the channel for what's optimal for absolute levels of lymphocytes. If you missed that, I'll link to it in the right corner. All right, so are these associations also present when using a different lab? So it's interesting to have associations using one lab, but if we see similar associations using a different lab with different people, that would add more strength. So this is an external validation or an external replication of these data, or potential external replication. And to take a look at that second test, or second lab testing company, we'll take a look at clinical labs generated by Quest. Same approach, biological age, a red line at 0 equals chronological age. Above the line is an older biological age. Below the line is a younger biological age relative to the chronological age. So once again, we can see that glucose and HbA1c are on the right side, which is actually the wrong side, an older biological age. So relatively higher glucose and HbA1c across two different lab testing companies, Quest and LabCorp, are associated with an older biological age. And we can also see at adiponectin, once again, relatively higher levels associated with an older biological age. But where the story gets more interesting, or at least is somewhat of a surprise, is we can see that blood levels of lead are associated with an older biological age and in the same ballpark as having relatively high levels of glucose and HbA1c. So I haven't measured lead levels on my own yet. Props to those who have done that. That will be on the next round of tests for me coming in September. And in terms of what's optimal, how low should we go based on what the published literature shows, I'll have an update video on that coming relatively soon. On the other side of the fence, in terms of a younger biological age, once again, we can see albumin. So relatively higher levels of albumin are associated with a younger biological age in both men and women across two different lab testing companies, Quest and LabCorp. So to answer the question, which biomarkers are most predictive of biological age? When looking at data across two different lab testing companies, Quest and LabCorp, we can see that glucose, HbA1c, and adiponectin were both associated with an older biological age across both companies. And conversely, relatively higher albumin was associated with a younger biological age using both Quest and LabCorp data. All right, that's all for now. If you're interested in more about my attempts to biohack aging, check us out on Patreon, where I offer blood test consults. And before you go, we've got a whole bunch of discount links that you may be interested in, including discount links for epigenetic testing, NAD quantification, or microbiome composition, at-home metabolomics, at-home blood testing with SciFox Health, which includes ApoB, but also GrimAge, green tea, diet tracking with Chronometer, or if you'd like to support the channel, you can do that with the website Buy Me a Coffee. We've also got merch, so if you're interested in wearing the ConquerAging or Diet Trying brand, as I've got on here, that link and all of the other links will be in the video's description. Thanks for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the video. Have a great day.